Carson, at this point, after writing her Sea Trilogy, started getting dumps of documents. She had worked, as I mentioned, in U.S. Fish and Wildlife. All of these government scientists started saying, Rachel, look at what DDT is doing to the fish in our test. Look what it's doing to birds. Look what it'll do to human health. And she took all of this raw data in a whistleblower-like fashion and started crafting it into the book that is Silent Spring. In Silent Spring, she works on in the late 50s while she has breast cancer, while she's very sick, while she's going through radiation treatment. She's having to wear a wig for losing all of her hair. And she starts writing this manifesto. No book in American history has had the wallop or the impact of Silent Spring. The New York Times just asked me that, and I had to make a list of ones that had that kind of impact. Something like Thomas Paine's Common Sense in the American Revolution, maybe Zebulon Pike's Wilderness Exploration Diaries when they were entered into the Congressional Record. Certainly The Jungle by Upton Sinclair for meatpacking industries. But Carson's book that she was working on finally got launched in the early 1962 with excerpts published in The New Yorker. What Rachel Carson had going for her beyond these movements coming together was the man I mentioned, Justice William O. Douglas. Douglas was from Yakima, Washington, could barely walk because of polio as a boy, became the hero, legal, brilliant mind of Columbia Law School, went on to be the Sterling Professor at Yale Law School, and Douglas goes on to being the longest-serving Supreme Court Justice in U.S. history. Keep in mind, in the period I'm talking about right now, post-war America, there is no sewage treatment plants. There is no Environmental Protection Agency. There is no Clean Air Act. There is no Clean Water Act. So these activists that are coming together from different walks of life are starting to imagine a world that we're all living in right now, but we weren't back then. And Douglas says that it's the Uncle Tom's Cabin, Rachel Carson, what it meant to Lincoln and the abolitionists. This book's going to mean to this new wave of conservationists, or what we call environmentalists today. And the New Yorker excerpts called, and it caused an explosion because the chemical manufacturers were they were being backed up with real science. And they called her a spinster, hysterical, lesbian, any name you can think was thrown at Rachel Carson to try to smear her because she had no children, although she took care of her nephew. And it's just vicious stuff. And yet, while she's being hammered and she's standing up with the New Yorker for her research, John F. Kennedy at the podium, at a question, says, I'm going to look into this pesticides due to the book by the research found by Miss Carson. And Kennedy orders a Presidential Science Advisory Committee to look into her findings. He picked the right scientist, the best scientist. Just like in climate change today, we have climate experts. And they said Carson was right. DDT will poison people. And it wasn't just DDT. It was all of formaldehyde, misforming babies, and all of these hocus pocus chemical, Aladdin's lamp, Presto, all these things that weren't vetted due to the hurry up mentality of World War II were now causing a problem. Carson's book comes out in the fall of '62, and life's never the same in America, because Carson is telling every one of you, up until Rachel Carson, conservation was what Theodore Roosevelt was doing. Let's save a national forest, or let's save a monument, Devil's Tower in Wyoming, or let's save Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. Kind of heirloom stuff. Rachel Carson is saying, your son and daughter are getting sick. playing in your backyard. The problem with DDT was it was being aerial sprayed. And the big legal case in the late 1950s was led by Marjorie Spock. And Marjorie Spock was an organic farmer on Long Island who sued all the way to the Supreme Court. And Marjorie Spock, whose brother was Dr. Benjamin Spock, the famous baby doctor, but Marjorie Spock said, I have a right to grow organic produce. How come a Suffolk County or Long Island or New York or U.S. Department of Agriculture can spray chemicals over my organic acreage? She said, I have a right to be an organic farmer. Who owns that airspace? Lawyers in the audience will know, what a conundrum an issue like that is. Who's owning the airspace above And she lost in the Supreme Court. But William O. Douglas wrote an extraordinary dissent, and which is also, with Silent Spring, the opening bell of the environmental movement.